Hey everybody, back again. All right, let's get into it. We're going to be talking about 440C versus 154CM. See if I get the numbers straight throughout this thing. Let's go. First of all, this all started early on in my knife journey when I found an article on BladeHQ comparing 4 properties of steel, and I can show up a little clip here, and it has a nice little diagram, and it shows you what their number rating is in 4 different areas: edge retention, toughness, corrosion resistance, and ease of sharpening. And ease of sharpening is somewhat subjective, but there is something to it. I think mostly when I graphed it out that edge retention contributed basically to what ease of sharpening was. So if it had better edge retention, it was harder to sharpen, which makes sense, right? Because that's what's resisting your sharpening. I mainly focus when I research knife steels and research knives on 3. I have 4 fingers up. I have 3 fingers. That's the edge retention, the toughness, and the corrosion resistance. On that initial BladeHQ initial article that came out, it's changed now. If you go, when I link to it down there, you're going to see that it's changed now. Where before they had a budget area, mid-range, high-end, very high-end steels. And they had rounded numbers to whole numbers too. And the way it worked out was that 440C was a budget steel, but it had the exact same properties as 154CM, which was a more expensive steel. And I said, why would anybody ever use 154CM when you can have the exact same properties as 440C and it's cheaper? So I went out and I tried to find a knife that was in 440C, and there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of knives. I did find this. I believe this is a Firebird knife, and I've altered it quite a bit. A great knife, 440C crossbar lock. I'll put it up on the screen what knife this is, and I've acid etched all the hardware on it and the blades, so that's why it looks a little dull gray like that. More on that in a future video. But I wanted to pick up a 440C knife just to see how it was, and it's a great, holds edge very well, as good as 154CM. I mean, I haven't cut any rope. I haven't done that measurement on that specific knife, but I have lots of knives in 154CM. Do I have one right here I can whip over? This is the Kizer Sheepdog, and I've blacked out the handle on that Micarta. It was black already, but it was that when they say black Micarta, sometimes they just mean a dark gray, but this one's blacked out, and this one's in 154CM. It gets a little more complicated than that, and you can dig down into the numbers in Larry Thomas's book and on Knife Steel Nerds. He's written an article about 440C versus 154CM, and that's what I'm going to reference mostly during this video, is that article. And the guy, I finally break down and buy his freaking book, and then what does he do? He comes out with a new edition, I swear 2 weeks later. I got $2 off. I was like, oh cool, the price is dropping, $2 off. I'm finally going to pick it up. Save $2, and they're probably giving them away now because the new edition's out. Larry and Tom. You know what? I got to give the guy a minute because I found out in one of his recent videos, he's from Las Vegas. Well, he lived there till he was 8. And I'm from Las Vegas too. And Zach in the Wild is from Las Vegas. So getting into Larry Thomas's stuff in his book, it's not quite the same exact properties. 154CM actually has better edge retention. The toughness is the same, and maybe 440C has a little bit more corrosion resistance. I'll put the numbers up here right now. But sometimes I don't know where Larry Thomas gets these numbers from. I need his raw TCC data or his CAPTCHA data, because it looks like to me that 440C, I'm going to put up his graph right here, has a range from about 400 to about 450, and 154CM is almost 500 cuts. What is that, 25% more? And he does mention in his article about this that studies have shown that 154CM has about 20%, depending on if it's rope cutting or what you're cutting, edge retention than 440C. You are getting about 20% better edge retention with 154CM. And so 154CM was initially developed as a bearing steel for bearings, for ball bearings. Steelies is what we might call them growing up in Vegas with Zach in the Wild and Larry Thomas and Jimmy Kimmel, who went to the same high school as me, Clark High School. And the guy, you know what? I actually was in 2 plays in high school at that theater, and I sang tons of choir performances at that theater, and he comes along and he gives them the money to upgrade the theater, after I'm gone, of course, gets his name put on it. He never did. He was smoked outside next to the tree. He was never in that theater. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I don't know if that's true. I take it all back. Thanks for helping out our old alma mater. So they had a bearing steel that they used a lot. Now we're talking like 1930s. We're talking World War I, World War II times. And they said they had this steel that wasn't stainless. They're using it for bearings called 52100, but it wasn't stainless. And so when they needed stainless, they used 440C. It was a stainless bearing steel. Neither one of them were great at high temperatures. So they needed something that could go at high temperatures, greater than 350 degrees. The British were using something called T1 steel, and it had tungsten. But they were concerned that they were going to have a shortage of tungsten. And so America said, let's make our own that is not so tungsten dependent. Developers in America came up with a steel that involved molybdenum. This was in 1954, and it was great at high temperatures, but it wasn't stainless. The same problem they had with the 52100. Crucible developed 154CM. So 154CM stands for 15% chromium for stainlessness and 4% molybdenum. This is how closely it's related to 440C. It was called 440C modified. These steels are very closely related. It's basically, so what are the properties of molybdenum? It actually has some corrosion resistance. It's been shown in studies to resist the pitting properties of corrosion, the pitting properties. So it does add some stainlessness. It allows higher operating temperatures, which I already said. And because it can withstand higher temperatures, you can treat it to higher hardness, giving it higher edge retention. 154CM becomes a big deal in the knife world in the 70s. Bob Lovelace, very well known in the knife community from that era, published articles in Blade magazine. He did some studies on steels. He made knives out of 154CM and kind of popularized it as a higher edge retention steel than 440C. Since then, powder metallurgy version of 154CM called CPM 154. What does spray form do for us? Decreases the size of the carbides, makes it tougher, maintaining the same edge retention. And that's why I think on this graph, that they don't put 154CM on there, because they're just comparing edge retention and hardness, and it would be almost the exact same for 154CM and CPM 154. Why did Crucible make CPM 154? They made it for knife makers. They had already developed S90V. They had already developed S30V. I mean, I could put those numbers up here, but higher edge retention. But knife makers were having a hard time grinding them. They wanted something easier to grind that still had a lot of edge retention, and so they developed, and toughness, and so they developed CPM 154. And I noticed that there was a question on Knife Center's video this week about this same thing. So maybe I'll get some clicks. Maybe this is a question people are having, and maybe I'll get some clicks. But like I said, I just summarized an article written by Larry Thomas on Knife Steel Nerds. Do your own research, look that up. But I'm telling you right now, 154CM has higher edge retention than 440C. PM 154 had about 200 cuts. How many do you think VG10? Because I would think VG10 and 154CM are very similar. The answer is VG10 had 480. It's in the range higher than 440C. Would you put 440C with 14C28N? And the answer is, yeah, I would, because 14C28N cut about 420 and 440C cut between 400 and 450, so it's about the same. And 14C28N is like super tough. It's like a 9, right? So like to get the same toughness as 14C28N, the next one up in stainless is basically Magna Cut. All right, guys, that's my 2 cents. You do get an upgrade on 154CM for 440C, obviously. I mean, it's just always something that's blown my mind since reading that first BladeHQ article. If you like this content, subscribe. What did I get wrong? Larry Thomas, if you're out there, comment down in there, and I'll just be overjoyed. You'll never see this. Zach in the Wild, comment below. Hey, man, let's get together and talk about West Side Vegas. Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel, if you see this, let's meet down at Clark High School and put on a show. I can talk about knives. I'm still giving away that blacked out Worksharp RMX. Still looking for even one person to write in their comments, I want the knife.
I said, I want the knife.
I got some more subscribers, but you're not showing me who you are, so I can't even verify it if you were one. Nobody cares about that black knife. I down-talked it too much. Or you can't have an automatic, or you don't like button locks. It's definitely made for a certain person, and it was supposed to be me, so they blew it somehow. Okay, guys. See you on the next one. Bye. Molybdenum.